Well, Christopher Hill is the U.S. ambassador to Iraq. He joins us now. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Hill. Those attacks that were just mentioned, multiple targets, including the Iranian and Egyptian embassies, over 40 people killed. Many would say this makes a mockery of your claim that the security situation has improved, doesn't it?
We know, actually, the security situation has improved, and if you look at the data over the course of the year, there's clear improvement in the security situation. What these attacks show is that you still have these terrorists, and by the way, they have no support among any group of Iraqi civilians. They have no territory that they can hide in. They operate clandestinely as small terrorist cells, and they are still able to inflict damage.
Do you think it was Al-Qaeda?
You know, that is what most people are saying. Obviously, we have to wait for the investigation, but certainly that's what things are leading us to believe.
Okay, let's talk a bit about the elections. Prime Minister al-Maliki wants a recount, and he said that he feels there was fraud in the vote. Does he have a point? Could he possibly be right?
Well, first of all, we think it was a very well-run election. We had the UN there working very closely with the Independent High Election Commission. We believe it was a very well-done election. Now, every candidate has a right to look at the election throughout the country and see whether they want to see some votes recounted, but they have to do that through a complaints mechanism. The complaints mechanism is in the courts, and I do believe that Mr. Maliki is trying to take that up through the courts, and he's made very clear he will live with whatever decision is made.
Do you think it's sour grapes from him, perhaps?
You know, again, there are elections all over the world, and when politicians lose an election by 2 seats, they have a right to kind of look very carefully and see whether they can find examples where they think if there's some real scrutiny that maybe it will change. So he has a right to take up issues through the established procedures, and that's what he's doing.
These elections have seen a lot of difficulties in forming a government. The count itself was really close, and now there's been incredible difficulties ever since then. Do you feel that these elections have shown that sectarian politics are alive and well in Iraq?
I think what these elections showed is that the results were very close. And when you have a close election, it puts to the test a lot of different institutions. For example, the Iraqi court system has to really be up to the challenge of dealing with people who are contesting parts or places in the election. So you bet they need to deal with that. But I think the elections show that Iraq is on the way to a democracy. They organize these elections themselves. They have their own security people out there dealing with us. So I think they're going in the right direction. Obviously, the true test will be when they're able to form a government, and they're different coalitions, and they're talking to everybody. And I think it's very difficult to predict at this point, first, when we will get a new government, and secondly, what the government's going to look like.
Well, in trying to answer that, through their support of the Sadrists, who are seen as the kingmakers in this election by many, and their support of others, it seems we sort of know who Iran backs to win this election. Through their support of Iyad Alawi and others, it seems we know who Saudi Arabia want to win and form a government. What about the United States? Who's your preferred candidate?
Our preferred candidate is whoever the Iraqi people can elect and have form a government democratically and according to the procedures. And I don't think it's helpful for the U.S. to have a candidate. I don't think it's helpful for anyone to have a candidate except the Iraqi people.
Okay, so
and frankly, they are working this.
Let me rephrase. Who do you think would have the best opportunity to form a democratic government? I mean, you have a strong interest in this. You've got 90,000 troops. You're still legally an occupying force. So you have a strong interest. Who do you think would have the best chance of creating a democratic Iraq?
You know, I'm a diplomat. I'm not a prognosticator. I'm not going to tell you who's going to win this thing. What I will tell you is that they are all talking to each other. My prediction would be whoever wins is someone who is able to put together a broad coalition, and my guess is that broad coalition is going to include Sunni, Shia, and Kurds. And by the way, you mentioned the Sadrists are kingmakers. You might also mention that the Kurds are kingmakers too. And the Sadrists they had some 38 seats out of 325, which is the new number of the parliament. That's about 12%. Last time they had 30 seats out of 175, which, if my arithmetic is correct, is about 11-something%. So I don't think there's a big change there with the Sadrists.
The Sadrists they've wrapped up their own mini referendum on who they're going to back. They haven't revealed the information to all of us yet. We're looking forward to that. Who do you think they're going to back? Do you think there's a possibility that they could back Iyad Allawi?
Hey, these are tough negotiations. People are going to sit around with a lot of cups of tea and probably a lot of cigarettes before they finally figure out who they're going to back. And I think it'll depend on what's on the table and what's going to be on the table, or ministerial positions, issues like that. So I think they're going to be in the middle of the negotiations and discussions and arguing about that. And I think the Iraqis know how to do that. They don't need help from me. Your
predecessor, Ambassador Crocker, last month he had an interview with Foreign Policy magazine. He said that President Obama's plan to decrease the U.S. presence in Iraq to 50,000 support troops by the end of August makes him, quote, nervous. That was the word he used, nervous. Does it make you nervous?
No, it does not. In fact, I've been living in Iraq in the last year. Ambassador Crocker left in February 2009. Since that time, a lot has happened in Iraq. And one of the most important developments was that the U.S. has fully honored its commitments in the security agreement. And one of those commitments was, of course, to pull U.S. forces out of the cities, out of the towns, out of the localities. That happened last June 30th. That is a very important development. And based on that development, the kind of tasks that the U.S. has to do now, that is advise and assist Iraqi forces, is best done at a number of 50,000. So right. I think it's an appropriate number. Our president thinks it's an appropriate number. Our military commanders think it's an important number and an appropriate number, and that's where they're heading to.
Could this election cause you to rethink that? Because we're in April now. August is not very far away. If there's still no government by August, would you be sitting down to rethink that troop redeployment or withdrawal to 50,000?
Again, now you're asking me hypothetical questions.
But you must be discussing that.
Oh, diplomats never discuss hypothetical questions. What I will tell you, though, is that there's a lot of work going on today, right now, as Iraqis talk to each other. And I think the Iraqi people who went out to vote in that election, and they went out in very big numbers, they are expecting to see their political leaders work this and get to a new government. So I think you're going to see a new government, and I surely believe that you're going to see the U.S. troop withdrawal stay on schedule.
Okay, so I'll ask that question again in a roundabout way. Have you discussed the possibility of changing your mind if the government is not formed by August?
There are probably 16 ways you can ask that question, but I've only got one answer, which is I'm not going to deal with a hypothetical question. I will tell you that as the situation looks today, it is very clear that we are on schedule to reach the 50,000, which is called for in the President's speech over a year ago. We have worked very hard. That was not a number grabbed out of the air. That was a number carefully selected together with military commanders. So they are moving to that number. And given that our troops are out of the cities, out of the towns, out of the localities, it's a very appropriate number to, at which point we will cease combat operations and deal with advising and assisting Iraqi forces. Right. Iraqi forces are really standing up. Police forces are standing up. This is the future of Iraq. Iraqi forces, not U.S. forces.
Ambassador Hill, pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.